Morning, people. How are you? My name is Gary Woodham. I'm the CEO of Harness Racing New Zealand. This is my first go at Facebook. In fact, I didn't even know I had a Facebook sign on, but apparently I do, but I've never used it. What we're going to trial today is me having a little chat, you asking me some questions, and me giving you some answers. So let's go and start. First of all, I've been given 14 questions from the marketing team that have come into our website. So I will start with those and then I'll see if there's any more from the floor and we'll go from there. So out of those 14, I have about 8 that are all about the RIU. So we'll start with that. How does that sound? Because clearly there's an interest in what the RIU do and how they do it, and rightly so. So the first one I've got there from RIU is who determines which horse or horses are swabbed at each meeting? That's the responsibility of the chairman of stewards at the meeting. They select the horses to be swabbed at the race meeting. That's where that comes from. The next one on the RIU is when is the decision made? The answer to that is the decision is usually made subsequent to the running of the race. However, that can be made earlier if other factors are present. And that is up to then the chairman of the steward to change any of those. The third one, which is a real good one in my eyes, are all swabs actually tested? I didn't even know the answer to that, to be fair, but the answer to that is yes, they are all tested. The next one that we've got is, does the person or persons have ownership in any racehorses? They're meaning the stipendiary stewards, JC and so forth. The answer to that is no. No stipendiary steward or racing investigator they are prohibited from under the rules of owning racehorses. And I guess it's because of the roles that they play. That makes sense to me. The next one is, are all swabs tested and are Australian and Singapore labs used? Yep, the RIO do employ services for overseas laboratories. We have used Australia and we've used Hong Kong in certain instances when we're needing to go further in some of the testing. Next one is, why does the RIU not have portable swab units on race courses for pre-race as used in TV border control swabs for drugs? Interesting. I didn't even think about that, but great question from whoever. The answer to that is such tests are only indicative and samples must be confirmed by an accredited laboratory under the rules. So I guess they can do them, but then they have to go to another testing regime afterwards. Next one, currently penalties appear to be a negotiation between plaintiff and RIU. Is there any consideration possible for the future to the victims? Long answer for this one. In cases where penalties are to be imposed by the informant and the defendant are entitled to make submissions to the JCA who make the final decision as to what, if any, penalty should be imposed. Neither the informant or defendant have any input to the decision outside of advising what their thoughts are on the appropriate penalty. In a recent case, victims of rule breaches have also made submissions to the JCA on the offending and the impact upon them, and the JCA referred to their decision. Now, I actually sat in the last couple of months on 2 of these hearings, so I can vouch for how they do that. Both victim, plaintiff, and so forth, and defendant were all able to have those say. So everyone can have a fair crack at it. Next one, the real cost of surveillance investigation prosecution appears to fall solely on the RIO JCA and their budgets. It appears they do not, in most cases, try to recover anywhere near the 100% of the cost. This is a huge cost to racing in the millions of dollars annually. I don't know if that's true, but that's what the question says. Is there a change coming for in the future to look at the recovery of these costs? The answer to that is the general policy of the RIU is to not seek costs when the defendant admits the charges, when costs are applied for the amount of water that falls to the JCA. So it depends on it. At the stage, the JCA and the RIU are funded through Class 4 gaming through the TAB. So that is a question, I guess, of recovery of costs the TAB and the JCA will need to discuss when it comes to budget time. But I do understand what people are saying. It is an expensive business to run, JCA and RIU, and should then people be paying for those services. I guess it's like the law courts. You pay for a lawyer, you pay for, then you have to pay reparations. So anyway, that's all the ones that I have so far on the RIU. Now let's get to the ones that pertain to other questions. First one, could you please outline Harness Racing New Zealand's plan to grow and further develop harness racing in the central districts, i.e. Wellington to Taranaki? Really good question, because coming into this role, I noticed that we had limited racing in that environment, and that comes down, so there's some investigations clearly, and that comes down to animal population and amount of trainers and so forth that are in that region. That has declined over the last decade. Manawatu through Palmerston North is the main site. In the coming season, that has been given some more race meetings, as well as 2 extra grass track racing over early February at Hawera. So the goal is to try and increase and get back to more racing in the Manawatu. This coming season will be a test to see if that can be achieved. It's expensive for the TAB to move their vehicles and people around to these areas, and it is easier, I guess, for costs also for owners close where the horses live, to get them to race closer to where the race meetings are. This keeps the cost down. So long-winded answer is we're trialing it and see what it now comes up to owners and trainers on that region to get behind it if they want it to grow. We are very happy to support it should the numbers actually get up there, and that's kind of where we're at. Next one, the John Massara report highlighted the horse well-being as a major contributing factor to the future viability to sustainable racing. We have seen an increase in public awareness of racing and a negative spin from newspapers highlighting the vulnerability of the horses in general. What actual difference is happening to get harness racing participants to a higher level of acceptance for the responsibilities associated with the horses? Well, it starts, the first point, when you first come into it. So if you're buying a horse, breeding a horse, you need to be able to understand what is expected of you. So that's where the code of conduct comes in, and which we hope to have in place for the new season. So that will actually then start educating people on the expectation we have of the way that they work within our sport and the way they look after the horses. It then carries on to the cadets program, where we educate the cadets on animal welfare and going through. The main task is actually now, to be fair, is to get the experienced people, trainers, to understand what is expected so that we keep our social license to be able to run our sport. And I guess there are some things that have happened in the past that probably aren't accepted in today's society. So that's an education program, or re-education of some, and new education of others. So Harness Racing New Zealand will be looking at making sure that we put the right information out into the hands that need it and follow it up. We only have a couple of people in the whole of that area of animal welfare, and it's an area that has become a major focus for us, and we're looking at hopefully adding some more people to that environment. One area that is, I'm very proud to say, has gone well around the animal welfare is our Hero program that we've launched in the last few years. That's taken off, and we've got a lot of good supporters behind that, and there's a lot more work to be done. So again, it's a priority for HRNZ, and you'll see more of that in the future. Next one is, given the spotlight on all forms of racing, can we expect a further tightening on penalties in response to horse wellbeing rate offences? I will just explain that one of my priorities was animal welfare, as well as making sure that we have fair play in our sport. RIU, the Racing Integrity Unit, have now signed MOU, which is a Memorandum of Understanding with the Ministry of Primary Industries. So what's going to happen going forward, where the RIU, JCA and ourselves see an offence on an animal that we feel needs further investigation, that will be passed to the MPI for them to take ownership of. The same way when we find fraudulent issues or anything like that, we then pass them to the police. So we have now got an ability to move things through to another government agency to look at these things on our behalf. And that will be happening very soon for one case that's just gone through our process. Right, next one. Is there a conflict of interest when the CEO and the HRNZ board can own racehorses? Very good question. I know that for me, owning the horses as the CEO of harness racing and breeding, by the way, is a must for me personally, the way that I want to operate the business. I don't go and tell the clubs how to run the races, so I don't go to the farms and tell my owners trainers how to train my horses. But I do understand from an owner's point of view what it costs to actually own an animal, train an animal, and race an animal, and what's needed from animal welfare. So I see it as a bonus. I see it as something that is helping me in my job. Now, where I look at is harness racing board members. Well, most of these board members are actually elected from clubs, and clubs have presidents and trainers and all sorts of people, and some of these people are on those boards and they own horses. So, if you're going to take the board from that environment, it's pretty hard not to see them actually wanting to be part of it. Where it comes down to is making sure that we have the right integrity. If there's an issue that comes up in any board meeting or any committee meeting where any of my animals, trainers and that are going to be discussed, then I walk out. It's not for me to listen to that, and it's the same happens to a board member. So as long as you have that integrity and we're making sure that we're disciplined in the right conversations with the right people around the table, I'm okay with it. It's also good to have a balance of people that are there that don't own horses. So we have a balance of those that do and those that don't, and that way you get a better conversation and get for me, a far richer outcome in decisions. Next one. Let me see what else was on there. Is it reasonable or not to believe if management have a vested interest in racing horses that they should not be allowed to comment or vote on any issue that may or may not affect their trainer or regular driver, especially if the trainer or driver is under police investigations? I'm not sure what this person's question is, which management you're talking about. Are you talking about management at HRNZ or at the club or where? No, I think it's reasonable that, in my mind, that if you're, as I said before, if you're too close to it, you shouldn't be there voting and so forth. So I'm not sure where the questions come from or what you're trying to achieve by it. But if you're online, whoever sent that one in, and give me some more understanding. I'm a little bit confused at what you're actually trying to get me to answer on that one, but give it another go. We'll see how we go. What's the next number on the list? Conflict. Next one is, are HRNZ pushing for retrospective testing of samples now that they know what has been used in the Jesse Alford case? Look, samples are kept for 7 years. As new technologies are created through the laboratories, we have the ability and the right to go and retest on any sample that we have. And we will start considering doing that as we move forward on our crusade to try and rid our sport of substances that animals shouldn't be given. So that's kind of where I'm at with that one. They are there, we can use them, and I see us taking that opportunity at some stage to do so. What else we've got? I think that's about it. Now I look at my list. Yep, that's me. So if anyone's online that has another question, fire it at me. If I don't get any, we'll end this session then, and then we can have another chat another day. Okay, nothing coming through. Great. Well, for those of you that clicked on in and had a listen, thank you very much. For those of you who have sent me some questions, 14 of them prior, I appreciate it. I hope this has helped to those that asked the questions and also those that listened in. And if we think this is worthwhile, let Courtney from HRNZ know, and we'll give it another go. All the best. Happy punting. Look after yourselves.